Hello all. So back from an awesome week in Montreal, Quebec, the best the best European city in North America. that's that's how I love Montreal. Went up there for continuing medical education, and I want to share with you a few things that I learned about cancer. Namely, my brain, of course, goes into analogy mode, and the it occurred to me how similar cancer, all forms of cancer really, are to being in relationship with a toxic personality. Let's say a cluster B, malignant narcissist, let's say. And that pattern of what happens in both, we can draw analogies and potentially maybe come up with further solutions for how to treat complex PTSD, HPA axis dysfunction, and all the sequelae that comes as a result of being in a relationship with a toxic person. Thanks for tuning in. So, cancer, first of all, develops from our own cells. Narcissistic relationship with a narcissist. The narcissist is able to invade and become a part of somebody's intimate circle. And in fact, really the people who have the most trouble with someone with NPD are in the interior group, right? The narcissist has invaded into not just the relationship, but invaded into basically that core mechanism whereby somebody in a relationship with them, has them in their circle, in their world, as their filter on what's happening in their life in terms of who they turn to consult for advice, etc. Right? If they get in like spouse or significant other, right? They're a part of your inner circle, they're part of you, and then it's like the Trojan horse, right? Sneak in, and then from the inside, create your destruction. The cancer doesn't really have to sneak in because it's your own cells that basically go rogue. All of a sudden, they stop listening to, for whatever reason, whether it's a genetic mutation or their theories as to is this caused by a virus or bacteria or some kind of infection that triggers, or trauma, I should say. Trauma, we know certain genes getting turned on and off, or even just methylation of certain genes can cause increased susceptibility to certain kinds of cancers. And so what happens is, it evades detection. Your immune system is constantly surveying to try to find cancers, to take out cells that are rogue. Just as in a relationship, when a new relationship with someone, you're kind of on surveillance, looking for clues that there might be a problem, flags, and even still, sometimes they can bypass that. So that's thing one. That's analogy one piece. Another thing that can happen is really, so things get pretty bad often before you have symptoms. I mean, this is very similar to a covert narcissist, right? There's certain kinds of cancers where the absence of symptoms is the problem, right? You don't have pain. You don't have a clue that things are going wrong. If you're in a relationship with a covert narcissist, and it's a pretty well developed, meaning the more pathological the narcissist, that can evade detection for a long time. You may be there for 10, 15, 20 years before there's detection of what's going on. And so that scenario, right? At that point, things have already, the cancer has advanced. Now there are metastases all over the body. Similar situation when you're talking about somebody who's in a relationship with a toxic person, right? You've got mets all over the body. You've got leaving a toxic relationship. The treatment really probably should be on par with somebody with end-stage cancer, because it affects every area of someone's life. I mean, you're talking, it's destabilizing financially, emotionally, psychologically, physically. Someone doesn't sleep, they have insomnia, they have anxiety, they have depression, they feel like a pinball machine. I mean, a pinball in a pinball machine. Sorry. And that constellation of pinging all over the place, it's trauma. Somebody's in basically fight or flight, dropping into freeze, pinging back out again. And so in order to get traction on that, we often, I think, aren't aggressive enough. We think, I'm going to do something and then we'll check in 2 or 3 weeks, right? That's not soon enough, right? If it's often like an end stage cancer, or just even more advanced cancers, I should say, especially if you're trying to treat it naturopathically, as my colleague Andre is doing, you have to check in much more often. You want to do a treatment, you want to make a change, you're going to check in a couple days, or maybe tomorrow, or maybe in a few hours. I mean, it's very similar to a classic toxic personality disorder relationship, especially in the acute phases when someone is trying to get out. And so that, it's very similar. Another piece would be just when you think about so cancer is its own destruction. It is self-destructive, ultimately, because it hijacks and goes over the boundaries in someone's body. The cancer mass itself starts amassing and hogging all the nutrients, all the blood supply, cutting off vital organs, cutting off parts, that the person needs to live. And ultimately, if the person dies, the cancer dies. And so there's an element of self-destruction in the way cancer behaves, in its rogue alien nature. Same thing with a narcissist, a cluster B, right? The narcissist is destroying its own narcissistic supply, for lack of a better way to describe it, as it feeds on the narcissistic supply. It is destroying this person and hijacking the resources, and at some point the person's either going to get out or they're going to die. You end up too on both ends with cancer and with a cluster B relationship, where cancer, ultimately people die not necessarily directly from cancer. Most of the time you're dying from the sequelae, from the side effects of, if you have certain kinds of cancers, let's say bone cancer, you have tremendous, horrific pain that drives the need for pain management strategies. Typically the opioids are the class that's used, conventionally speaking. And ultimately, many people who die with cancer in that scenario are dying from an overdose of opioids, right? It shuts down the respiration centers in the brain. You end up with all sorts of problems that, yes, the cancer is pushing on various things, but ultimately the treatment, the opioids, kill the person, because they essentially have to get pain management, have to get basically to levels where it's destructive. It destroys somebody and kills them. Very similar with, right, with a narcissist. What ends up happening at the end, the far end of the spectrum, somebody who is in a relationship with a narcissist, even if they're not aware of what's really going on, will seek out coping mechanisms for the pain of being in a relationship with a narcissist. Alcohol, drugs, smoking, vaping, let's go down the list, right? Too much, hypersexuality, getting out there and just living in a way that you're, in order to cope with the pain of all the sequelae from what this narcissist is, doing to the relationship, to the person. And that can be what happens. Somebody in that context, I know there are cases where, narcissists have actually killed, right? They've murdered somebody. If we're talking about domestic violence, that kind of situation. But even in the absence of that, even if we're talking about an emotionally, psychologically abusive narcissist that is not physical at all, which the numbers say that will eventually escalate into physical abuse. Even in the absence of physical abuse, you have the person, similar to cancer, looking for coping mechanisms for the pain without maybe even knowing what is causing this pain, and either self-medicating, or even as they try to deal with it and get away. So you have a lot of similarities. You have this, this alien nature to both. What ends up happening, one of the reasons that cancer can defy detection oftentimes for a long time is because it is functioning quite alienly. And so the body has, ways of saying, okay, like, turn that off, we're done with that. And the cancer is alien, not listening to that message, to that shutdown feedback loop. Same thing can happen with a narcissist, right? Let's say you're in a relationship with a narcissist, your significant other, your spouse, and you get up in the morning, you go to find the coffee, to make coffee, as you do on a daily basis, and you can't find the coffee, right? You don't go to the place instantly of, oh, my spouse must have hid it somewhere, right? Nobody has that thought. You're in a relationship with someone. You're unless you yourself have some potential poor mechanisms of coping, you don't go there. You don't assume, oh, it was somebody else. You go, oh my gosh, did I put it behind the sugar in the pantry? Or wait, did we run out? Did I forget to get some? Right? And then it's only later when you're looking for something else, and underneath the body pillow on the floor on their side of the bed, where you never go, is a carafe of coffee beans? What the hell are they doing there? That's what we're talking about. That's gaslighting. But that's not where you go when you're in a relationship with someone who is toxic. Because I've had a lot of people ask, oh, how does somebody end up? A smart person, intelligent person, self-aware, etc. How do they end up with a narcissist? Especially a narcissist that's that bad, right? And the answer is it remains undetected because a lot of the behaviors are so freaking alien that you don't recognize it because it's not a common thing that you go to in your head. You don't instantly go, well, my spouse must have hid my coffee underneath the body pillow on his side of the bed. No, that sounds ludicrous. And then the other piece is with gaslighting, when you start to detect these things and actually start to talk about them in your circle of influence, in your circle of friends, people look at you like you're crazy, because who would hide the coffee underneath the body pillow in the bedroom? Right? It's weird. Or, I mean, as you describe things that happen that are basically gaslighting, there's a weirdness of an alienness to it, and it's not that common to human experience, and so you tend to get written off. And that then therein is a way that it can go persist longer, and it takes more treatment, more skill, more Jedi mind tricks to get out, right? Same thing with cancer. Cancer functions similarly in that it evades detection, and then as you start to try to address it, it mutates and changes the way it responds and does all sorts of things to defy, similar to gaslighting. So, okay, there you have it. Just wanted to share that, the exciting world of my inner brain. I'm excited. Actually had some conversations with a couple of colleague friends of mine, and we are going to come up with some cool stuff as regards CPTSD and helping treat HPA axis dysfunction and getting our brains working better, naturopathically speaking. So I'm really excited to go down this rabbit hole, and I'll try to keep you all somewhat in the loop. Thanks for tuning in. Adios.